Welcome. My name is Josh Almeida, and I am very excited to bring to you our latest installment of Focus on Learning, brought to you by New Bedford Public Schools and New Bedford Cable Network. While the best way to find out what your child could be doing at home is to work directly with your child's teacher in school, we know these videos will help everyone keep learning active at home.
Hi everybody, my name is Mrs. Furtado. I am a grade 3 teacher at the Gomes Elementary School. And today I'm going to be doing a little mini lesson on choosing the right book and some reading strategies for you. One very important thing is that you should be reading every day. Suggested reading time for third graders is 15 to 20 minutes per day. So when you are home and you're choosing a book, we want to make sure that you're using a book that's perfect for you. So parents and families, help your child make sure that they're choosing a book that not only meets their needs, but is also of their interest level. So here are some guidelines that we suggest you follow when choosing a book to read for pleasure or for school projects. You want to make sure that you read the back cover. The authors and the publishers do a great job at putting an amazing summary on the back cover of the book. And it shows you a little bit about what the subject matter and who the characters are in your story. If you read that and it interests you, go to the next bullet. Take a picture walk. You remember this from kindergarten and first grade, browsing through the story and looking at the illustrations. Do those illustrations pique your interest? Do they want you to read more? Then you're in the right track. And then you read the inside flap. Lots of books have a jacket on it that when you open it up, you can read the information that's provided by the author on the inside flap. That's going to give you more information. It's going to tell you if that author is an award winner. It's going to tell you a little bit more about what that book is about. And if you're still interested, you want to think about your purpose. Did your teacher assign a book to you? Does it need to be fiction, nonfiction? What type of genre are you looking for? And you want to make sure that the book you're choosing matches that purpose. And the last one, but probably the most important, using the 5-finger test. And you probably already know what that is, but that's to test the readability of a book and to make sure that it's not too hard or too easy for you. If you read a first paragraph, any paragraph in the book, and you find 0 words that you don't know, it's too easy. Put it back and choose a different one that's a little bit harder. If you read that first paragraph and you find 1 to 2 words that you don't know, it is a just right book. Anything more than 3, 4, 5 words that are unfamiliar to you, that are challenging to read, makes that book really difficult for you. So you want to make sure that there's 1 to 2 words that you don't know in a story, and that means it's at your reading level. So by doing these 3 or 4 things, you can make sure that you choose a book that is for optimum reading for you. It's the right purpose, it's your interest level, and it is the right reading level for you. Once you've done that, you're ready to apply a strategy that I'm going to teach you called visual thinking, okay? So I brought a prop with me, okay? This is a little thought bubble. Every time I'm reading and I think of something in my mind, I'm going to write it down, okay? So now that you've got these strategies, I'm going to clear this for us. And I'm going to write down some of the ideas that pop into my head while I'm reading. And I've chosen one of my favorite books for you, okay? This is Roald Dahl, BFG, okay? It is a 3rd grade suggested top winning author, Roald Dahl, and it is a perfect story if you like fantasy and giants. So I'm going to read the first chapter in this story. And as thoughts pop into my mind, I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to record those ideas down. It's really important when you read to pay attention to the voice inside your head. Sometimes when you're reading, you may be wondering things about the characters. You may be asking questions. And you want to pay attention to those voices inside your brain as you're reading, because that's what helps you understand what you're reading. So this strategy is called visual thinking, okay? This is what it looks like. And every time I read something, I want to pay very close attention to that voice that's going on inside my head. And I'm going to model this for you by writing down some of the ideas or questions that pop into my head while I'm reading this first chapter. All right? So if you are familiar with this story, I want you to read along for enjoyment. And I'm going to model this strategy with our first chapter that is titled The Witching Hour. Sophie couldn't sleep. A brilliant moonbeam was slanting through a gap in the curtains. It was shining right onto her pillow. The other children in the dormitory had been asleep for hours. Sophie closed her eyes and lay quiet, still. She tried very hard to doze off. Pop! Something in my brain is asking a question. And as I'm reading, I want to pay attention to that question. In my mind, I'm wondering why Sophie can't sleep. Sometimes your teachers may call this anecdotal notes, or you might call it visual thinking. But either way, you want to pay attention to that voice that's going on inside your head as you read. So my question right now is, why can't our character Sophie fall asleep? I know when I have trouble sleeping, it's usually because I have something on my mind. So I'm wondering if Sophie's having something on her mind that's making it hard for her to sleep. Now back to the reading. It was no good. The moonbeam was like a silver blade slicing through the room onto her face. The house was absolutely silent. No voices came up from downstairs. There were no footsteps on the floor above either. The window behind the curtain was wide open, but nobody was walking on the pavement outside. No cars went on the street. Not the tiniest sound could be heard anywhere. Sophie had never known such silence. Perhaps she told herself this is what they call the witching hour. Pop! Something just popped in my head. The witching hour. Have you ever heard that term used before? I have. I'm making connections in my brain with this term, witching hour. I've heard parents call witching hour that time where toddlers are having a really hard time right before they fall asleep. And they might get a little crazy. And I hear parents call this a witching hour, that really difficult time for toddlers right before their bedtime where they're really struggling behaviorally. Sophie's using this term. So it might mean the same thing in this book, or it might mean something else, but I'm going to read on to find out more. The witching hour, somebody had once whispered to her, was a special moment in the middle of the night when every child and every grown-up was in a deep, deep sleep, and all the dark things came out from hiding and had the world to themselves. Pop! In my brain, I'm thinking Sophie's definition for witching hour is a little different than the way I've heard that used term. The moonbeam was brighter than ever on Sophie's pillow. She decided to get out of bed and close the gap in the curtains. You got punished if you were caught out of bed after lights out. Even if you said you had to go to the lavatory. That was not accepted and an excuse, and they punished you just the same. But there was no one about now. Sophie was sure of that. Pop! I'm listening to that voice inside my head as I read this, and I just heard Sophie use a word, lavatory. You want to pay attention as you read to words that you might be unfamiliar with. This may be an unfamiliar word to you. I know that's a fancy name for the bathroom. I also have a question that's wandering in my head. It's swirling around, and I'm wondering why there are such strict rules in Sophie's house about getting up in the middle of the night. Do you have rules like that in your house at night? Or are you allowed to get up if you need to use the restroom? Let's read more. She reached out for her glasses that lay on the chair beside her. They had steel rims and very thick lenses, and she could hardly see a thing without them. She put them on, she slipped out of bed and tiptoed over to the window. When she reached the curtains, Sophie hesitated. She longed to duck underneath them and lean out of the window to see what the world looked like now that it was witching hour at hand. She listened again. Everywhere it was deathly still. Longing to look out and become so strong she couldn't resist, and quickly she ducked under the curtains and leaned out into the window. In the silvery moonlight, the village street she knew so well seemed completely different. The houses looked bent and crooked, like houses in a fairy tale. Everything was pale and ghostly and milky white. Across the road, she could see Mrs. Rant's shop, where you bought buttons and wool and bits of plastic. It didn't look real, but there was something dim and misty about that too. Sophie allowed her eye to travel further and further down the street, and suddenly she froze. There was something coming up the street on the opposite side. It was something black, something tall and black, something very tall and very black and very thin. Pop. The author leaves us at the end of the first chapter really having some wonderings. I have some wonderings in my brain right now. I have some questions about what that very tall, very thin, and very black figure was. I want to know who is walking down Sophie's street during the witching hour. So that brings us to the end of our chapter, okay? And I want to encourage each and every one of you every day to make time for reading. As I said earlier, 15 to 20 minutes per day is what a grade 3 student should be doing each day. And whether you're reading a graphic novel, a comic book, a chapter book like I just modeled for you, the important thing is that you are making time for reading every single day. Use the strategies at the top of this mini lesson to make sure that you've chosen a book that is a good fit for you. You don't want it to be too hard or too easy. And families, you can help support students by following those steps as well. Another thing that is an amazing strategy is making sure that somebody in the home is also reading to children. Whether it's an older brother or sister or a parent or adult just reading before bedtime, it's really important that our students hear what good readers sound like. So being read to is also an important part of balanced literacy. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to make sure that when you read, you're following this visual thinking step. And whether you're writing it down or just really paying attention to what your brain is thinking when you're reading, it's really important that you listen to that voice. That helps with your comprehension. So I want to challenge each and every one of you that's watching this video to get out there and do some reading today and every day. Whether you enjoy it or not, it is an important part of your literacy and making sure that you maintain the fluency and comprehension that's so important to growth. Have a great day, everybody, and keep reading.